My wife of 19 years told me about her friend setting her up on a blind date. She told me this story out of the blue. My wife had a girls' night out with her friend Tanisha. Tanisha set her up with a guy she had slept with a few weeks earlier. Tanisha, apparently hooking up with someone else, thought it would be a good idea to set my wife up with her past hookup. My wife went out at 7 p.m. and came home at 3 a.m. The confession came completely out of the blue. She said she was sorry and wanted to work on our marriage. There were tears and begging for forgiveness. She claimed that nothing happened between her and the guy because Tanisha had slept with him, and she knew agreeing to meet him was wrong, but she did it anyway. I don't believe her when she says nothing happened. She also mentioned that the guy worked at a SOM and made more money. I think that's why she was trying to replace me. If she could find someone with a better paying job, this post would be much different. It was clear to me she was actively looking to replace me. Not long after this girl's night out and before the confession, my wife and Tanisha had a total meltdown of their friendship. They went from best friends to Tanisha being a liar and a manipulative, jealous person, according to my wife. I think the confession, or partial confession, was to keep Tanisha from telling me about her sleeping with the guy. She was gaslighting me, only telling me part of the story to make herself look bad but not revealing the whole truth. Honestly, I didn't need to know everything that happened, but the holes in her story were too big to ignore. Little coincidences around that time started to make everything come into focus. When she told me about it, I felt nothing. I went numb. I didn't even get angry. I'm just done. I'm working on my exit strategy now, getting the finances in order, finding a place to move into, etc. It sucks that she would be willing to throw away 19 years of marriage with no regard for anything, including our 2 children. Update her panic mode in our counseling sessions. She's now in full-blown panic mode. She was recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder where her white blood cells are attacking her lungs, causing asthma attacks that normal medication can't correct. The only drug on the market that controls the condition costs $133,000, even after Medicaid. If I didn't have really good health insurance through my job, there'd be no way for her to afford it. She's trying everything to reconcile, even setting up couples counseling. We made it through 2.5 sessions. During the sessions, she explained why she came clean with the partial truth and why she wanted to fix things. But every session turned into her blaming me for everything. She even mentioned my working 50 hours a week to make ends meet because of her partial disability. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but everything was being brought up, including our 2 children, except the mention of her date night, which was off limits. About halfway through the 3rd session, the counselor looked her in the eye and asked, "If you have such a high-powered radar to detect what everyone else is doing wrong, point that radar at yourself and tell me what you do wrong." The proverbial hit the fan. My soon-to-be ex-wife started yelling at the counselor, demanding to know why she was attacking her when we were there to fix me. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking my video. After a few minutes of back and forth, my wife stormed out crying. The counselor told me that my wife has a deep hatred for me and that she doesn't think the marriage can be salvaged. My response was simple, yep and nope. I informed the counselor that I appreciated her time, but we wouldn't be back. She offered me individual counseling, which I told her I'd probably take in the future. I then proceeded to tell her about the taboo topic, and needless to say, it didn't surprise the counselor. She confirmed her suspicion. The whole trip back home was about what a quack the therapist was. I've been on autopilot ever since. I refer to the house as the house because it's no longer a home to me. I moved into the spare bedroom. As far as I'm concerned, I may be married, but I no longer have a wife. If she didn't need good medical insurance, she would still be out there hunting for someone else. The blind date guy in the store. I don't need to track down Tanisha to get the full story. I live in a small community with less than 900 people. I commute to work in a bigger city every day, but at the only grocery store in the community, guess who I ran into? None other than the blind date guy. Small towns, right? It was bound to happen. I was at the end of the aisle when he walked up to her. She had her back to me and didn't realize where I was. He asked her out again, right in front of me. She declined, but that's when I walked up. I asked her if this was the guy she went out with about 2 months ago. He asked, "What's it to me?" And I backed him up against the shelves, told him I'd been her husband for 19 years, and I thought he was going to soil himself. My wife tried to get me to back off, but I growled at her to shut up and told her to listen immediately. She started crying. I asked the guy if he had been with my wife, and he swallowed hard and said yes. She cried harder. I told him to never let me see him again. He apologized for everything and practically ran out of the store, living in a sham of a marriage. Her affair partner outed her by being in the wrong place at exactly the perfect time. If it hadn't been him, I would have eventually pieced the story together. Most of the time now, I'm on autopilot. It's as if all emotion is gone. I have to fake happiness while I'm with my children. I don't know if this is some emotional self-defense mechanism to keep me from falling apart, but I know I can't stay in this sham of a marriage. I get up, go to work, barely eat or sleep. The only people I've told about this are strangers on the internet. I have no one to talk to about it. I go from one day to the next, pretending everything is normal. Maybe my soon-to-be ex-wife was right. The therapist does need to fix me. Second story, my wife is cheating with my coworker. I'm 33, male, and my wife is 30, female. We've been together for 11 years, and I thought everything was good between us until recently. For some context, I work as a dispatcher for truckers. It's a pretty good job with good benefits. Don't miss out on the journey to 1,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button now and be part of something big before everyone else. And I make enough where we can both be comfortable. My wife had a job building gaming computers, but she lost it due to cutbacks, so I've been the sole earner, picking up a lot of hours. One day, my car battery died, and I had my wife take me to work. When we made it to the parking lot, I saw my coworker, Andrew. I waved at him, and he walked over to say hello. I introduced him to my wife, and he shook her hand. He looked at me and said, "You never told me your wife was so beautiful." She blushed, and I laughed, not thinking much of it. I said, "Yeah, I'm lucky to have her," and then we both went inside. After kissing my wife goodbye, I got my car running again, so I went to work as usual. During lunch, I couldn't help but notice my wife's car in the parking lot. I walked towards it and saw her and Andrew talking and eating lunch in her car. I was upset but kept it cool. I knocked on the window, and she opened the door saying, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm having lunch with Andrew today." Andrew added, "I hope you're not angry." I took a deep breath, said no, and walked to my car, trying to keep my cool because I didn't want to start an argument. I could feel my wife getting frustrated with how I walked away, though. Later that day when I got home, she blew up, saying I embarrassed her in front of Andrew. I asked, "Why do you care? When did you start hanging out with him?" She said, "I'm a grown-ass woman, I don't have to tell you," and walked off. Since then, she's been distant, and I've noticed she's been on her phone more, calling and texting friends. I'm sure it's Andrew, but I don't want to accuse her unless I'm certain. Update: following her to gather evidence. I'm planning to put an air tracker in my wife's car to follow her and gather evidence in case we end up in court if we divorce. A part of me doesn't want to do it because I don't know if I can handle the pain, but I know I have to if I want to have the truth. Update number 2, the proof. My friend gave me his AirTag, and I hid it in my wife's car. I followed her, though she told me she was going to see a friend. I didn't believe her, so I followed her in my friend's car to make sure she didn't spot me. After a 20-minute drive, she pulled up to a hotel. I felt sick to my stomach, hoping I was wrong, but I saw Andrew wave at her, and then she ran over to him, jumped on him, and kissed him. I was hurt and angry, but I didn't get out of the car. Instead, I took some pictures and drove off when I saw them walk into the hotel. I went home and cried, screamed, and punched a hole in the wall. I called my friend to come over, showed him the pictures, and started crying again. 11 years down the drain. My friend gave me a hug and told me to get a lawyer and keep gathering evidence against her. I didn't know if I could keep up the facade anymore, but I told my friend I'd try. So, over the past few weeks, I've been stacking up evidence and keeping my distance. I've seen them go to restaurants, movies, and hotels, and every time it hurt, but I tough it out. She always told me she was going out with her friends or family, but I never called her and said, okay. I thought I could keep it up for at least a few more days, especially because the lawyer I'm seeing says that I have more than enough evidence to make sure I win and keep everything when we divorce. But I think I messed up yesterday. My wife didn't even tell me happy birthday, but her parents did. When I went to work, my coworkers got me a cake and some gifts. I tried holding back the tears because for a moment I forgot about everything, at least until I saw Andrew. He got me a gift, and I faked a smile and said thank you. When I opened it, it was the comic Batman Death of the Family. And I was actually surprised because no one at work knew I was into comics, and DC was my favorite. When I told Andrew that, he said my wife told him. Then all I saw was red. Next thing I know, my coworkers are holding me back, and Andrew is in the corner covering his nose and yelling, "What the?" Then I screamed, "I know you've been with my wife." Everyone got silent and looked at Andrew, and he tried explaining it to me, but I didn't care. All I wanted to do was beat his ass until he stopped moving. But then my boss came in and sent Andrew home and took me to his office. I told him everything and showed him some of the pictures. He apologized to me and gave me some time off to sort everything. He said he would deal with Andrew. It really went south when I got home, and my wife was waiting. She blew up on me, saying that I was wrong for doing that to Andrew, and that she talked him out of pressing charges for hitting him. She kept yelling and yelling, saying Andrew makes her feel like a real woman, treats her right, and knows how to make her feel special. I finally popped and just yelled, "I don't give a shit." She looked surprised and went silent. I kept going, saying, "If he makes you feel special, go live with him and have him support you because I'm done." Then she had the nerve to cry and say that she was sorry. She tried saying how Andrew caught her at a moment of weakness, but I just took a deep breath and told her to get a lawyer because we're getting a divorce. She really tried to apologize and said that she couldn't afford one and that we needed to work on ourselves, but I just looked at her and told her to pack up. She kept crying and begging, but I just got her suitcase and called her sister to come pick her up. She locked herself in the bathroom, saying she won't come out until I was willing to work things out with her. I kept telling her that I didn't want to work anything out and that we needed space, because when I saw her, I felt angry and hurt. She finally got out, apologized, and then packed her things and waited outside for her sister. Now, I'm finally in the house alone and I can't stop crying. I feel so many things and I just don't know anymore. Sorry if I was all over the place with my post. I'm just feeling horrible and emotional. But I am planning on seeing a therapist soon. I'll definitely update everyone once all this blows over. I'd like to thank everyone again for the advice and support. This is the last update from me on this story. There are no further updates as of now. If I release an update in the future, I'll post it with a part 2. So make sure to subscribe to this channel. Second story, I cheated and cannot forgive myself. Hello everyone. I'm a 20-year-old woman who was in a relationship with a guy whom I thought I would eventually marry. Unfortunately, one night I got drunk and ended up sleeping with someone else. I confessed to my boyfriend and he rightfully ended the relationship. It's important to note that we were in a long-distance relationship. Despite the breakup, we're still friends, but I understand that getting back together is unlikely due to my betrayal. I was surprised by my own actions because I had been cheated on multiple times before and had always sworn never to do the same. In my freshman year of college, I was involved in hookup culture, which I now deeply regret. Prior to college, I had a boyfriend who cheated on me and subjected me to a traumatic experience, which I never shared with anyone. Reflecting on my actions, I realized that I was never truly happy on my own and hadn't healed from past heartbreaks and betrayals. At present, I'm struggling with overwhelming guilt, shame, and regret. I've turned to reading the Bible, realizing its significance, and living a fulfilling life and building successful relationships. I've also started therapy to work through my emotions. While I can't undo my mistakes, I'm committed to personal growth. I feel a deep sense of shame about my past and have decided to remain celibate until I find someone with whom I want to spend my life. My ex and I initially started as friends with benefits, a decision I now recognize as unwise, especially after understanding the power of lust. Despite my mistakes, my ultimate goal is to have a loving and successful family. I wonder if a future partner can forgive me for my past. I've distanced myself from friends who lied and cheated, recognizing the importance of surrounding myself with positive influences. I'm seeking advice on moving forward. I acknowledge that what I did was wrong. My ex had a history of cheating, which I understand doesn't define someone's character, but I feel it defines me. At the age of 20, I consulted a psychiatrist who ruled out personality disorders, emphasizing the importance of focusing on my health and avoiding alcohol and wheat. My therapist highlighted issues of low self-esteem and impressions that I had long been aware of but never addressed. I am determined to transform into a new and better person, realizing how much I lost myself and my identity through my regrettable actions. Third story, wife's emotional affair. It's been around 7 months since the day of discovery, commonly known as D-Day. Initially, I refrained from sharing my story here, unsure of my reasons for doing so. Now, perhaps it's a need to confide in someone. Regardless, here's my story. I'm a 34-year-old male, and my wife is 30. We've been together for 12 years, married for 5, and have an elementary school-age child together. To provide some context, I've held a commercial driver's license for a few years. While I did some work with it, I despised the lifestyle of being constantly on the road. Family time and being at home were always more important to me than chasing a paycheck across the country for weeks at a time. Eventually, I found myself in a position to purchase a beautiful semi-truck. Before making this decision, I discussed it extensively with my wife. The primary reason behind my interest in this venture was her plan to return to school full-time. The idea was that by owning the truck, I could supplement our income, allowing her to focus on her education without financial worries. This is where the complications arose. Although she wasn't enthusiastic about the idea, she acknowledged it as our best opportunity to support her education. She understood the significant amount of time I would spend on the road away from home. It was a tough spot for her, managing the household with 3 dogs, an elementary school-aged child, a full-time job, and the daily chores. However, she was aware of all these responsibilities, and we had discussed them before I purchased the truck. Initially, everything seemed fine. When I was home for my brief 34-hour reset, I pitched in with household tasks, caught up on chores, and prepared to leave again. Throughout my time on the road, communication with my wife was a constant effort. Adhering to strict rules about phone use while driving an 80,000-pound vehicle, safety always took precedence. Texting while behind the wheel was not an option. During stops for loading or unloading, I caught up on messages and engaged in conversation. While away, I had expressed a desire for phone intimacy and more explicit photos. Considering our marital connection, initially my wife was hesitant about phone intimacy, expressing discomfort with the idea. I respected her boundaries and didn't press the matter. The exchange of explicit photos was infrequent, limited to occasional bathtub selfies. However, a significant shift occurred around April. Suddenly, she began sending a multitude of provocative pictures, wearing sexy outfits, using filters, and posing in peculiar areas of our home, like the basement and living room. The change raised concerns. The pictures were alluring, yet the sudden and random nature seemed odd. I voiced my appreciation for the pictures, but couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I directly asked if these were intended for someone else, and she vehemently reassured me that they were solely for me, emphasizing her love. Despite finding no evidence to the contrary, the situation felt unsettling. Fast forward to my birthday in April, and I took time off the road to celebrate with family. One night, after my wife had gone to bed, I found her asleep with the TV on. Approaching her side of the bed to grab the TV remote from the nightstand, she unexpectedly jolted awake, reaching for her phone. This sudden reaction perplexed me. I had never invaded her privacy before. When questioned, she claimed it was a startled response while half asleep. Still, the incident lingered in my mind, and later, when she was still asleep, I decided to check her phone. Her unusual reaction warranted an explanation, and I needed to understand why.